Hey class, it's Ms. Terra with the very first lesson in Ceramics 101. Today I'm going to be telling you about what cones are and why they're important. And this is something that most ceramics teachers don't seem to cover, which I think is completely crazy because it's the basics of understanding clay and glaze and firing schedules. So let's get to it. So cones are a physical part of the firing process. I get mine in these little boxes. If you open it up, they come connected to two, and you have to snap that in half so that you get a cone, which it's really more of like a really elongated pyramid shape, but we'll go with it. And I'll show you in just a minute how this relates to actually firing your kiln, but bear with me. The function of cones is to measure the heat work in your kiln. Now that's not a specific temperature or a specific time. It's a combination of both factors. For example, say you leave a chocolate bar on the dashboard of your car, and maybe it's a kind of warm day, like 80 degrees, and it's only in there for 10 minutes, and so it only gets kind of soft. But then the next day, it's like 90 degrees, and you leave it in there for 10 minutes and it's totally melted. That shows that time isn't the only factor in determining heat work. Ceramics are kind of like that chocolate bar. It is a combination of time and temperature that gets them to vitrify, which is to harden, or glazes to melt properly. So most ceramic kilns are formulated to use cones. And so most clay and glazes are marked with what cone to fire to rather than what temperature to fire to. Some of the newer kilns on the market can be programmed to heat up at a certain rate, to reach a certain temperature, to hold for a certain length, but most ceramic kilns just use old-fashioned cones. Now there's two different kinds of cones. The first are these little baby ones that I just showed you, and the second are called witness cones, and they tend to be longer. They're about 1.5 inches tall, I would say, and they're a way to measure the temperature and heat work of your kiln. Unfortunately, I don't have any right now, but you can do a Google search for witness cones and you should be able to find an example of what I'm talking about. The witness cones basically witness what cone your kiln fires to. So if you're aiming to fire to, say, cone 5, you take a cone 4 witness cone, a cone 5 witness cone, and a cone 6 witness cone, and you press them into a bit of clay, let that dry, and then fire it with your pieces. And what you should get is the cone 4 should be curled over like that, the cone 5 should be just starting to curl, and the cone 6 should be pretty much upright. That shows that you've reached your target temperature and time, or heat work. If you're firing a new kiln for the first time, I would absolutely recommend placing witness cones on each shelf level in your kiln and in several different areas. That'll give you an idea of if it's firing evenly, what spots might get hotter than others, what areas might need some repair work, etc. Alright, we're gonna go take a look at my kiln and I'll show you where cones come into the picture. Now I'm gonna show you how to put a cone inside. So, down here, you can see the remnant of the cone from my last firing. And the cones will often change color during firing. The colors they come as just help to differentiate what kind you have. Most of them will turn that white after you fire them. Hi! You're in my kiln now. So this little bar right here is called a Kiln Sitter. And what'll happen is the cone goes right in here and holds it up. And then when the cone reaches temperature, it'll bend, and that little bar will fall down and it will release the mechanism on the front that keeps the kiln on, so the kiln will automatically shut off. This is what the front of my old kiln looks like. And this is what I mean by the Kiln Sitter. So this part goes up, this holds it in place, and that's the bar that lifts on the inside where I put the cone just before. So once I have it all set up, then I can load the kiln with my work and then just press the on button. And I can control the temperature rate using these. And I'll do a whole other firing video later. I just wanted to show you how cones are related to firing your kiln. So now that you've seen what a cone is, what it does, and how to load it in your kiln, you'll notice that when you're shopping for glazes and clays, you'll be looking for what cone you want to fire to. So I do all of my work in cone 5, 6. And in the next video, I'll be talking about choosing your clay and your glazes and pros and cons to the different cones of clay and glaze. But keep in mind that you always want to make sure that you have the right cones for your firing, the right kind of clay for those cones, and the right glaze for that clay. All right. If you've enjoyed this little lesson on cones, keep in mind that these videos are totally free to the public. I just set out a little virtual tip jar, and as long as I'm making enough tips, I can keep making videos. So if you can afford to and you found this lesson informative or interesting, send me a couple bucks. That would be great. Also, a little note to the patrons of Miss Wondersmith. Since you're already supporting my twin sister, consider this a perk as part of your Patreon subscription. If you'd still like to contribute, you're welcome to, but please don't feel guilty if you don't. I'll see you next time with choosing the right clay and glaze for you.